Hope you're wavy, hope you're wavy, hope you're wavy. Hope you're crazy. I make music. 310 songs. 310 that I released this year. So link in the description if you want to check that out. Link in the description if you want to check that out. I would really, really appreciate it. Okay, so one of the biggest questions when we talk about God is, why does God allow suffering? That's a question a lot of people ask. Why is there evil in the world? If God is good, surely he would get rid of all the evil. And it seems like a big question, but when you really think about it, like when you really, really think, it's not that practical. Because you really have to ask the people that ask this sort of question. When someone asks you, why does God allow evil in the world? The question I would ask is, like, what's the alternative? That he just gets rid of all the evil? Because then, okay, so you're making a bunch of assumptions when you say something like that. You're making the assumption that we have nothing to do with the evil that's in the world. Evil is some external force that's imposed itself on us. And human beings have no hand in the matter of evil. Because here's the thing. We were made with free will. We were made with the ability to make our own choices. The story of Adam and Eve, God gave them everything and he said, but there's this one tree I don't want you to eat from, for the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You can have everything else, but don't eat from that tree. So right there, he's setting up this rudimentary rule system. You can have everything except this. So that's like the first moral law. Don't do this, but you can do everything else except this. Hold on. Now, he did that for a reason. He could have just not put the tree there. Right? He could have just not put the tree there, and thereby removing the choice for them, so that they can only ever do good. But the issue with that is, what you essentially create is puppets. You can't really have a relationship with someone if they can't opt in, if they can't choose you. You have to give someone the choice and let them be aware of all the options they have so that they can make an informed decision. So he told them, this is what the tree, this is what it does, and this is why well, he didn't give them like the unnecessary details, but he let them know, you have this choice. This tree will give you the knowledge of good and evil. Don't eat it. Don't eat from it. But everything else you can eat. And then obviously the serpent comes and whispers in your ear, did God really say da 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 da? And why does he have, if you eat the tree you're going to become like him, and that's why he doesn't want you to eat it, and all these sorts of things. And started in placing all this doubt in her mind, in Eve's mind, and obviously her own ego and desire to be like God and stuff like that eventually led her to eat the fruit. She convinced Adam, and then yeah, and we see that recurring cycle every day. We make the same choices. People think if they're in the same position as Adam and Eve, they would have chosen differently, but we prove in our own lives every day that that's not true. People constantly think, maybe my way is better than God's way. When God says do things this way, people are like, maybe I'll do things this way instead. It happens all the time. We see that even with how people are constantly trying to change societal structures, change marriage, change the way in which we deal with children, change everything. Defining morality for ourselves, defining good and evil for ourselves when God has defined what's good and what's evil. It's like we're constantly making that same choice. We're constantly stuck in that same loop. It's a lot of noise. Apologies. That Adam and Eve were stuck in. Oh my God. So yeah, it's a recurring cycle. And, you know, even if we take the intellectual route for a bit, I was watching a video, someone was talking about how this noise. There's the intellectual problem of evil, and then there's the emotional problem of evil. Well, the intellectual case, argument for evil. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, if you look at it from the intellectual perspective, people say there is evil in this world, therefore there can be no God, which is like, why? Why is that? Why does that make sense? Then they'll say no, because if there was a God, He would just remove all the evil. How do you know that? How do you actually know that for a fact? Because then you're making the assumption that there is no logical reason for Him to allow evil. In your mind, you're saying He just has no good reason to allow a lot of this stuff to happen. How do you know that for a fact? He could have several good reasons for allowing this, because the alternative is X, Y, and Z. You don't know that. So I've already broken down probably the biggest reason is free will. You give human beings free will. Human beings are gonna may or may not do evil things to each other. And it's not your job to just step in and stop all of it, because what does that actually mean? So you have to prove that there is no possible reason for God to allow evil in this world, and you can't prove that. That's not an investigation you can properly undertake. You're going to interview God, sit Him down and get Him to answer all your questions. You're going to follow Him around, but what are you going to do? Because you can't prove that there's no possible reason He would allow bad things to happen. Because, yeah, there's just no way of doing it. And by the way, another thing, I was going to say, if God, okay, let's say God decides one day, I'm going to get rid of all the evil in the world. How do you know you're not a significant part of that problem? And that means He has to remove you. If He says at midnight, clock strikes 12, all the evil vanishes, it will just be good. How many human beings will be left? How do you know you are not directly contributing to the problem of evil? In significant ways. Every human has flaws. Every human has this condition that propagates evil. And it starts out subtle and it snowballs and becomes real issues. Even if you were to start from scratch with humans as we currently are, it would, just a very, very, very tiny group of people, maybe a couple thousand, and they live in this little community, and then they have children and spread. Do you not think we're going to be back at square one in terms of the problem of evil? Honestly, guys, let's start being intellectually honest about these sort of arguments. It doesn't make sense when you really think about it, because what we're trying to do is strip away moral culpability for the situation we find ourselves in, and entirely pin the problem on God, as if we don't mess up daily. He gave us free will, and we did what we did with it. And another thing, so usually when people make these arguments about the problem with evil, why doesn't God do anything? Number one, I don't think He does nothing. I don't think that's true. In my own life, I've seen God work wonders for us, my family. Pull through in amazing ways. Help us in many situations. We've prayed for things when people were sick and things looked bad and people came through. When economically things were looking, during COVID, when everyone else was struggling, and we were doing better than we ever had before. And many situations pertaining to school, pertaining to my mom's business, pertaining to general life. and also some weird spiritual things as well. I've talked about the spiritual aspect of things on my channel before, but I'll just give a brief example. When I was sleeping at night, and when you get sleep paralysis, sleep paralysis is generally scary. It's a weird feeling that doesn't feel natural, and you can't move on up. But I've had sleep paralysis multiple times. I get it from time to time. But that one instance, I could feel someone in the room. And it wasn't a good presence either. Like, I could feel someone in the room. You can try and rationalize that however you will, but in my mind, I was like, this is not normal. Whatever this is, I just knew that, yeah, someone's in here and it's not a good person. It's not a good individual, and it was very scary. And in that moment, after the paralysis faded, I prayed and I said, Lord, never leave me. You should always be here, like right next to me. Because I know that if you're here, whatever evil spirit is stalking me would not even dare, in the Gospels, I think it's in Luke, in multiple Gospels actually, it talks about how Jesus has authority over demons. One of the stories was when he found the demon-possessed man who had multiple demons inside of him, and it said, "We are legion." That's the name that they called themselves, because they were a collective, and they called themselves legion, and they lived in this man, and they tormented him. And when they saw Christ approaching them, they freaked out and they begged him. They said, "Please don't cast us into the abyss. Send us into these pigs as well. Rather send us into these pigs. But please don't torture us. Don't send us into the abyss." Like, they were terrified of Christ. And then he commanded them to go into the pigs, and the pigs ran into this river and drowned. And it was just an example of how Christ has authority over evil spirits. He has authority over demons. He has authority over this world. And he's a force to be reckoned with. So yeah, I do think God does intervene. I do think God does do wonderful things for people. But on the grand scale of things, he knows that if he intervenes too much, he's essentially turning us into puppets. And what would it mean to properly solve the problem of evil once and for all? It would mean, at least in the way people are thinking of it, it would mean wiping out humanity, because that's where it started. That's where all this started. But people often make the assumption that God is this very reserved, indifferent tyrant who looks at our problems and smiles and does nothing. But the Bible provides a very different image. It says that God came down in the form of man and lived amongst us for like 33 years. He ate what we ate, he drank what we drank, he suffered a lot of the same conditions we suffered, but even more than that, he suffered more than any man has ever suffered, and allowed himself to be killed at the hands of human beings, just so that to redeem us, and then through his death vindicate us by him acting as the final sacrifice, the lamb that was slain, but also so that he could relate to us, and he could say with confidence, "I know what you've been through." Because I was on earth and I experienced earth. I experienced humanity. I experienced the wickedness of people. They did things to me that I did not deserve. I was completely innocent. And if you knew what I've been through, it would break you. He suffered. Suffered. And the point someone made was that Christ, technically speaking, could not die, because he had no sin in him. Sin is what produces death, right? from a theological perspective, if he has no sin, he has no death. He had to willingly give up his spirit. And that's what it says in the scripture. If you read while he was hanging on the cross, it says he gave up his spirit. It didn't say he just, gradually died. Like, he fell limp and then he died. No, it says he said a bunch of stuff and then he gave up his spirit and then died. Which means that was his choice. So if you think about that, while they were beating him, while they were torturing him, while they were doing all sorts of things to him, any normal person would have died before they even got to the cross. They unleashed an angry mob, people who hated him. Because you're saying a bunch of things. You're saying very controversial things while he was on earth. Chief of them being that he is God. And he upset a lot of people. And he was calling people out on their sin, on their hypocrisy. Making a lot of pointed statements that upset a lot of people. And he garnered a lot of enemies and a lot of people who hated him, and they were calling for his death. Like, imagine a deranged crowd screaming for you to kill Jesus Christ. That's what literally happened. Pontius Pilate was saying, look, I've got this guy Barabbas, who's this criminal and he's done a bunch of evil things, and then I've got Jesus Christ. I'm going to let one of them go, and then one of them is going to get crucified. Who do you want me to let go, and who do you want me to crucify? And they said, give us Barabbas and kill Jesus Christ. And they were chanting to kill him, kill him, kill him. These people were like crazy or out of their minds. Bloodlust. Just completely overtaken by this desire for death for this man. That crowd was unleashed on him. At some point, they managed to get their hands on him. Imagine that. Imagine this crowd of people that hates you and wants you dead. Someone just throws you into the crowd and they have their way with you. Think about what that looks like. He wouldn't survive that, and yet he did. He wasn't normal. He was God, eternal. He had to decide when he was willing to give up his. So he endured all that pain, all that suffering. They beat him beyond recognition. Stripped the skin off his flesh. Absolutely battered him, spat on him, kicking, punching, scratching. I don't know what they were doing, but he endured all of that. He took on all the sin of the world, of humanity, onto his person, and he took it with him into the grave and then rose again and vindicated us by acting as that lamb sacrifice that the Israelites had traditionally been performing for generations upon generations upon generations, for thousands of years. He became that lamb that was slain. But he was perfect and he was God, so it was the perfect sacrifice, the final sacrifice. There would be no sacrifice after that, because nothing can ever top that. So this is not a God that does not understand our suffering. That's the Bible's answer to this question. Like, who is God? And does he understand us? Does he love us? For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son. Think about that. But Jesus is also God. Like, it's a Trinity. He exists in multiple states at once. He came down in the form of man and endured the entire weight of existence for our sake. So when we ask the question of why does God allow evil, we also understand that God loves us, and he understands evil very, very, very intimately. He's not sitting there on some throne completely removed from the situation. He was in the thick of it. He knows it better than you do. You haven't been through a fraction of what he's been through. He suffered things that people can't even conceptualize. He's crucified. Think about crucifixion as a form of torture. And no one's ever survived crucifixion either. They put a nail through your wrist. They nail you onto this wooden cross, and they put a nail through your feet as well. They nail your feet together onto this thing, and the way you're hanging, it makes it hard to breathe because of the way your chest is out and you can't breathe, and the pain of the nails. You're just hanging there and they're hurling insults at him. It says they were insulting him and laughing and mocking him while he was there. And even the prisoners that were to his sides were mocking him because he was being crucified with other prisoners. And they were mocking him. And he didn't deserve any of his innocence. Think about that. This is a God who understands suffering. Like, because he loved us and wanted an intimate relationship with us, he said, I will endure for their sake. Then they can't say that I don't get it. I get it. And when he resurrected, it says he still had the holes in his hand from the crucifixion, and he still had the hole in his side from because while he was on the cross, one of the soldiers thrust a spear into his side. So it says that I think they did that to check if he was dead, because this is an actual scientific process that happens in your body when you die. Your blood coagulates, and there's some other processes that happen so that if the blood was to come out, it would appear watery. It would look like water. So I think that the soldier thrust the spear into his side to check he was dead. And when water came out of his side, he was like, okay, he's dead. Because that process had taken place and whatnot. That's an actual thing that happens. You can Google that. So he still had that hole in his side, and he still had the holes in his wrists. And he was walking around like that, and he even told Peter, put your hand in my side and feel the hole. And he made Peter do it. He said, do it. Because Peter was like, you're not Jesus, because Jesus is dead. I saw him die. And he made Peter do it to confirm. And then Peter put his hand in his side and was like, oh my God, because who else is walking around like that? And who else has these holes in his wrists? So Jesus showed him, he's like, I'm the guy, I'm Jesus. And then Peter believed, oh my God. And it says that even in heaven, well, the Bible doesn't say that, but people speculate that even in heaven, Christ will have these scars. In heaven, Christ will be the only person with scars as a reminder of what he did for us during our little time on earth. He will be the only person in heaven with scars. And it will be these scars. So that people always know, you always know that this is a personal God. This is a God that loves you, and he put himself through hell for you. Literally descended into hell. That's what it says. For you. It says he descended into hell and wrestled with whatever agents in hell and got the keys of life and eternity and came out. Guys, this is not an impersonal God. This is a God that went into the trenches and suffered things that are unspeakable, unimaginable for your sake. That's why Christianity is beautiful. There's nothing like it. You can't convince me that Hinduism or Islam or anything else is the truth, because Christ is the truth. And also it's not just about what's my preference, it's also about evidence as well. I think there's enough compelling evidence to suggest that. Obviously, we know that Christ was a real person, but also that I think there's evidence to suggest that he rose from the dead as well. Well, that's a topic for another day. But anyway, why does God allow suffering? Because he allows us. I think is the most simple answer to that question. And there might be other reasons we're wholly unaware of, and probably we won't necessarily be aware of until maybe in the next life when he explains things to us, maybe. But I think the main reason is the issue of free will, but there might be reasons outside of that we're not aware of. When asking the question of why does he allow suffering or evil. But yeah, free will, man. If God said today, I'm getting rid of evil, how many of us would survive? Because how many of us are part of that problem? How many of us are baked into the equation of evil? think it's all of us. When you're buying your little iPhones and that are made by children who work in these factories and when you're being mean, when you're being selfish, when you're being negligent, when you're not giving, when you as much as you should give, so on and so forth. That multiplies across an entire species, and it propagates exponentially. Wherever there are humans, there will be evil. I'm sorry. At some point, things will just get out of hand. So I hope that gave you something to think about. We give God a hard time because I think we're arrogant and we're ungrateful, and we don't really think when we say these things. But that's not to shame you for asking the question. I'm just saying, like, God does so much for us, and I don't think he deserves the stick he gets, because he sent Christ. What more do we want from him? It's so ridiculous. What more do we want from him? He gave as much as he could possibly give. He gave himself. He gave himself. He said, I'll die for you. Okay, how's that? How about I just die? Will you be happy then? We're like, no, it's not enough. Die again. Human beings are something else, man. Anyway, hope you learned something, and yeah. Thank you for this individual watching this right now. Thank you for making them whole, unique, and blessing them with peace, purpose, and prosperity. Thank you that you've introduced amazing people into their life who love them, take care of them, and bring the best out of them, and introducing you people that do the same thing as well. So bless this person with the spirit of gratitude so they can give thanks for all the good things they have in their life, and through giving thanks they can find peace and contentment and also attract more blessings. So good health, long life, and happiness over this person, everyone they care about, Lord. In your mighty name I pray. In Jesus' name I pray.